Have we not started? No, I apologize, everyone. As soon as I went to start my meeting, my computer crashed, so took a little time to reboot. Are we recording? We are. All right, so let's just convene the meeting and get going then. Again, I'm Jim Paris, and I am one of your three co-chairs or tri-chairs, if you like. And we're here today to convene the sewage disposal working group meeting. And we'll get right into the agenda. And with regard to opening remarks, I would just say, thank you to all of you for all of the hard work you've done to date. Thank you to the subcommittees and the subcommittee chairs and the state agencies that have all participated. This has really been yeoman's work. And I know that there's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that has gone into the committees and subcommittees' work. So with that said, I guess I should open up to John and Sonia to see if there are any comments from my fellow tri-chairs.
Just, yeah, no, to thank, particularly Matt and the work of our subcommittee. It was tremendous. So I really appreciate that.
So, and I don't know if there are any legislators with us today that would like to make any opening remarks or any remarks at all. All right, seeing none, we'll just continue on with the agenda. So today's agenda is quite simple. Our sub chairs are expected to provide us with the subcommittee's recommendations, and we can go from there. So I'd like to ask David Potts if he's on to start with the recommendations provided by the Nitrogen Environment Subcommittee. Is David not with us? If not, then we'll just go ahead and move to one of the other subcommittees and hope that Dave joins us shortly. I see Matt Gilchrist here. So Matt, if you'd like to provide the recommendations of the Process and Funding Subcommittee.
We went over our recommendations on the last meeting. And we made a couple tweaks based on that conversation. We have, looking at it really quickly, we have 5 key recommendations, based on 6 pages of text. So I don't want to review those out loud. I would be glad to take any additional comment if anybody else had them. But if I could ask a question, what do we do now with the recommendations? How do we take the recommendations from the 3 subgroups and compile them into one massive or streamlined recommendation?
Well, you're jumping ahead in the agenda there, Matt. But
sorry,
but I'm
do you
happy
want me to read
say
them again? I'll ask that. Do you want me to read through them again and share my screen, or do we?
I think that couldn't hurt, given that this is really the committee meeting where we are to present our findings from the subcommittees to the larger group.
Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. The first recommendation was vetting and communication of subsurface sewage disposal system requirements. We captured the issue. All of the code advisory committee shares and reviews changes in regulations and technical standards for subsurface sewage disposal systems. Stakeholders have concerns about the processes, predictability, clarity, and inclusiveness, and seek a more formal, transparent procedure that ensures a standard timing for updates and broad improvement. So this closely goes with Sonia's group's recommendation. We, here on our screen, I'm going to review. I'm going to blow it up a little bit so everybody can see it a little bit better. So, we enter our discussion. I don't really want to sit and read the entire discussion. One of the biggest things that we try to put into our recommendation was the two different viewpoints that we encountered. Some of the DPH personnel had a different outlook on it, and we tried to come up with an argument that recaptured everybody's viewpoints, but then a consensus recommendation. And I'll read that. For this issue, to address these concerns while supporting continued process and technical integrity, we recommend establishing a code advisory committee modeled after the Building Codes and Standards Committee under DAS per Connecticut State Statutes 29-251. This committee would feature a formalized structure, regular review cycles, and a transparent procedures for stakeholder engagement and feedback. Current technical standards could be base document from which a newly empowered code advisory committee would begin their work. While some have raised concerns about potential inconsistencies with DPH's current regulatory approach and about the risk of increased bureaucracy or lobbying, these can be mitigated by ensuring all meetings are held within the public eye. To particularly address this, the committee membership could be expanded to technical experts, policy specialists, and industrial advocates in a way that encouraged active participation. The committee would not replace public comment, but would provide additional predictable venues for technical input, regulatory review, training, curriculum development, and consensus building among industrial professionals, public health officials, and other stakeholders. This approach seeks to enhance clarity, communication, and trust in the process while preserving efficiency and the primacy of expert input in technical standards and development. The majority of the committee members' recommendations and establishment of the new code advisory committee modeled after the building. Is that a repeat there? That is.
It's
this proposed. Sorry.
okay. No, go ahead. So yeah, we just need to edit that out. Sorry.
Yep. This proposed committee would implement formal structure all the way down to somehow we just have a duplicate in there. John, are these the most recent ones? These are the ones I just opened off your email.
Yes, so that's the clean version. I had sent out a markup and then the clean version to the subcommittee a couple of weeks ago, and this is the clean version.
Okay. It should be noted that the Department of Public Health does not support this recommendation. DPH has expressed concerns with granting increased authority to the regulated entities inconsistent with how the department regulates others throughout the state. Additionally, allowing a regulated entity to determine how they are regulated reduces the department's ability to effectively oversee and protect public health and the environment. DPH is concerned that the public health would no longer be a priority consideration. They feel public comment remains an important process to understand the work on the ground and the impacts on the people implementing regulations. Additionally, they feel that this policy could also introduce additional bureaucracy and opportunities for lobbying. Despite these concerns, most of the subcommittee believes that better communicating opportunities for participation and public comment, these risks are mitigated with government agency representation on the committee, greater transparency and inclusivity in the regulatory process. So basically, by making it a lot like the Building Code Advisory Committee, you will we'll have stakeholders from outside the government, but also those who, do I have a bad connection?
Yeah, you froze for just a second there.
So are there any questions or concerns about the first one? I don't know where I broke up. All right, the second was environmental engineering program capacity and focus. We defined the issue as the environmental engineering program at DPH is operating at full capacity, expanding its mandate to review subsurface disposal systems up to 7,500 gallons per day, along with potential responsibilities regarding AT systems, place significant strain on this small team. And we're acquiescing immediately that we know that we're using definitions that are DPH definitions. They're not legislative definitions. As the environmental and engineering program at DPH continues to take on additional work with the scope of the department, it is important that we consider adding more of their workload. We consider adding more to their workload. We consider the capacity and potential need for additional resources. Since 2020, the environmental engineering program has faced staffing challenges due to attrition and retirement, while simultaneously taking on additional responsibilities such as oversight of public pools and family campgrounds. These changes have extended the program's workload, which previously focused on sewage disposal, wastewater treatment, and management of human remains. As the responsibilities of this agency for program management continues to evolve, these increased demands have made it more difficult for the program staff to meet the needs of the state. Recommendation: the committee believes that DPH oversight of subsurface wastewater disposal, it is important and appropriate staffing should be assigned to focus exclusively on this key area of responsibility. This more focused approach would allow the program to gradually expand its capacity to cover all aspects of on-site water disposal. Reestablishing foundational capacity could also set the stage for developing a dedicated alternative technology section to oversee new policy initiatives and implementation strategies. Any questions on that? Education and training for subsurface wastewater disposal professionals. There's significant need to establish and fund ongoing training programs for the Department of Public Health, staff, local sanitarians, installers, and design engineers. Without regular education and professional development, the workforce cannot remain equipped to handle evolving industry standards and regulatory requirements. This has a long discussion. I'm going to just take a second, let you guys kind of read through that. The recommendation. We recommend the creation of dedicated education and training funds supported by both local permit fees and general fund allocations. Funding must be adequate to create the curriculum and allow the state and local government professionals to attend the training alongside other industry professionals, installers, and engineers. Designated staff should work in coordination with the new code advisory committee to set curriculum and design the training program. Collaborations with and reliance on industry associations is encouraged to facilitate effective field-based instruction, which can be delivered without the need for state-owned facilities and state faculty. This joint approach in providing a state-created curriculum targeting DPH identified shortfalls and initiatives. Sorry, I need more to drink. DPH identified shortfalls and indicative will indicate, will help ensure the workforce is well prepared to meet current and future needs in specific wastewater management. During this discussion, the committee identified continuity of knowledge and internal on-the-job training shortfalls within the state due to turnover, retirement, and work from home policies. Some believe that work from home policies in place for the state workers should be revisited to ensure that there's adequate in-office time for senior and experienced staff to transfer knowledge and provide training. And fourth, timelines and consistency in review processes. The issue is review timelines for local health departments and districts and the Department of Public Health and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection are both lengthy and inconsistent. The unpredictability leads to inefficiencies within the approval process. I'll let you read the discussion. Recommendation, we recommend a maximum of 20 days for the initial plan review / comment and 2 days from request to start inspections to be conducted by local and state entities. This does not stipulate approval in 20 days, but rather the completion of the initial review of the application with comments. And it does assume and require sufficient staffing levels to process these applications. Implementation. We also recommend implementing a work sharing system among health districts during periods of high demand, supported by memorandums of understanding and standardized policies would improve both consistency and efficiency. Additionally, consideration should be given to the development of a unified fee structure across all related agencies to provide the staffing and training required to better address peaks in demand. Consideration should also be given to instituting an expedited fee option, which would fund the work sharing program and potentially support the creation of a moonlighting initiative for sanitarians and local health professionals. Developers are likely to accept higher fees in exchange for more timely service. Questions, concerns? All right, then the final was
Matt. It looks like Bob Smith has his hands up.
Go ahead, Bob.
Can you go back to that 20 days real quick?
Yes.
Slide your screen down. Are we talking 20 business days or 20 calendar days?
I think it's 20 calendar days. Am I incorrect in that? I'm gonna reach out to GM.
I think, I mean, broadly speaking, most deliverable, state like building permits and stuff like that is calendar days.
So it wouldn't hurt to throw that word calendar between 20 and days then.
Go ahead.
It's working days. How I understand the Connecticut Public Health Code in section 1913 B103, they talk about 20 days, but it's working days. It can't be calendar days. We don't work on the weekends, so it's actually more or holidays, so it's actually work days and not calendar days, because calendar days would put us in a disadvantage.
It would be like a building permit, which is 30 calendar days. That's a building permit. So we could either go with 30 calendar days or we could go with 20 working days. Sonia?
I can't remember exactly where it is. Bob Smith would probably know better than me, or Jim, but there is an area where it talks about initial plan review that has to be done within like 30 days. For the life of me, I can't remember if it's calendar or working days. I do believe it is working days as well. Bob, again, you know the code better than I do.
Yeah, no, the only requirement is there, if someone makes a request to do soil testing, that has to be completed within 10 working days. As far as plan review, it says without unreasonable delay. There is no, that I'm aware of, that says it has to be done in 20 business days.
Jim?
If this is a requirement on the Department of Public Health, we would need it to be business days, because state employees are not able to work on the weekend unless they're paid overtime or comp time. And that wouldn't be accounted for in these situations.
I think Jim had some additional information. You're on mute, Jim.
No, I didn't have any additional information to add.
No, Jim, Karenberg.
All
Go ahead,
right,
Sonny.
give me a
Updates.
second, please, and I'll find it in the technical standards.
Excellent. Sonia?
I just had a quick question. If that 20 working days is for local health as well as state or just local
That would be our recommendation.
for both?
Both.
So I think one thing I'd like to point out here, a concern is, there seems to be a little contradicting recommendations here with regard to, the workload is, people are overworked and now we're going to put on stricter timelines. So I think that this recommendation of kind of the deadlines needs to be put on a longer runway, giving folks, if there are resources associated with this that would support increased staffing or whatever to support this. But I think having this expectation right off the bat would not set anyone else up for success to meet these deadlines, under the current working conditions. So we would ask for a longer runway to implement this.
It does say in the recommendations that this assumes that there is sufficient staffing levels to process the application. So I think it kind of gives you that caveat there.
Okay, so then if sufficient staffing levels are not available, we will not be hold, I'm just trying to say that if this is put into statute, that needs to be in that caveat of sufficient staffing levels needs to be included in the statute. And so you just want to make sure that we're all on the same page there, that is, if this is reflected, that's reflected in any legislative language that comes from these recommendations. I don't know if local health would have a similar input there.
Okay. Jim?
Okay, per section 1913B 103E. K, rights of applicant, all site investigations, inspections, review of plans, and issuance of permits or approvals by the local director of health shall be made without reasonable delay. That's number one. Number two, when requested in writing by the applicant, the local director of health shall designate in writing within 20 working days the requirements of section 1913B 103D or E. So the applicant would have to do something in writing. What's the definition of without reasonable delay? That's open for interpretation. This section here would definitely define that and give us a solid foundation of when to review plans.
I think that's, one of the reasons that we went to that 20 working days was because Jim brought that data to us in the beginning. But also, to talk about staffing, I think there's like your baseline staffing that we need to make sure is robust enough to meet baseline workload. But we talk about, moonlighting, we talk about, Sonia brought up in our last meeting that there are several, recently retired people that could step in and do some approvals on, a consulting basis. And also with our work share between two different, for the locals, allowing one local to call up the neighboring local and say, hey, we just got a huge subdivision. It's the second one this month. We need help. You know, that would, you don't have to increase your total number of people. You just have to provide for a efficient way to share the work. And that work is still going to have, to be, reviewed by the local, but a lion's share of the work can be done. Go ahead, Jim.
I thought this was something new that we brought up, but everybody remembers Frank Schwab. Frank was a man ahead of his time. Back in November 1st, 1993, they came up with a letter talking about small towns having to have like part-time sanitarians to work with them. And then Frank came up with all these supervisor responsibilities. So unfortunately, it's not a circular letter, but it's a letter from the state November 1st. And it's really interesting reading about the establishment of what we're talking about, having sanitarians in one health district or health department work with another health district or health department. So it's been discussed and been out there, the same situation since '93.
Jim, do you mind scanning that in and sending it to the committee or just to Jim, and then he'll get it out to everybody? Sonia, you had a comment?
Just one quick comment, and I just rethought about the question I had asked about whether it's 20 days for local or state. One of the things that does happen when it comes to a state project, it does go to local first. So we would have the initial review, and if that's the 20 days that you're talking about, I don't see how that's not okay. But that being said, that's just local health review getting it up to the state for review. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that one, because I am very, I think we all know there's only so many engineers right now at this point there. So local review, 20 days. I don't see a problem with that. Do you guys, any of the sanitarians? I don't.
And hopefully we could apply that to the state. So you're looking at 40 days total, plus postage. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it was written is that without unreasonable delay is, and if you absolutely insist on going out and doing soil testing when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, I don't have the opportunity to say, no, this is a stupid idea. If you say you want to do it, we have 10 days to do it. But I will tell you that I am not going to make a decision on this lot until such time as the snow is gone. And that way I can see areas of exposed ledge. I can see topography. I can see intermittent water courses. I can see all the things that are supposed to be on a plan that have mandatory setbacks from. That's why it says without unreasonable delay, and waiting until the snow is gone so you can do a correct site assessment, in my opinion, is not unreasonable. So I think making it a 20-day, you got to get it done. You get 20 days to get it done when you got 2 feet of snow. It's not happening.
All the proper stuff is on the plans.
How would I have seen that? If you called last week and said, I want to do soil testing on Friday, whatever Friday's date is, it's within the 10 days. And I say, look, we got a lot of snow up here. Nope, I don't care. I want to do the soil testing, and the regulations say you have 10 days to get that done. All right, we're going to go do that because you are insisting on it. I'm going to tell you it's not a good idea. And if we have to do further testing at your or the homeowner's expense, you're going to have to bring another machine back out a second time. The sanitarian's going to have to go back out at least the second time, and so that they can get a full and accurate review of the property without snow cover. I mean, wouldn't it just absolutely be disgusting if we put this 20 days in, you got to get it done. We did the soil testing. I don't know how you shot topography with 20 or plus inches of snow on there, but we did all this. And then in the springtime, it's time to put it in. And lo and behold, there's an intermittent water course 5 feet down gradient from where the system was proposed. Or there's exposed ledge rock 20 feet down gradient. That none of that we saw because there was snow on the ground. So I think
So
putting 20 working days to get this plan, I think putting a time limit on it is not a good idea.
doesn't stipulate you have to give approval, Bob, in 20 days. It says this does not stipulate approval in 20 working/business days, but rather completion of initial review. Your initial review could say, you know, we've reviewed the plans, they look fine. We need to go to the field to do our testing, and we cannot do it under these conditions. But you have to give them that answer in 20 days.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
go? So the one thing I wanted to mention is, soil testing we do before plan review. So I understand exactly what Bob's saying. For us, we have to, on a lot of times, monitor through the wet season. So I was thinking that the 20 working days would only be from initial application of a plan review, meaning that the soil testing should have been done already, Bob, because I get it. Yeah, I agree with you on that. But
all
that
the
the
work done.
initial plan, is that what the intention was?
Yeah. Jim?
Section, the section that I mentioned, which is on page 9 of the technical standards, it does say all site investigations. So, and again, it has to be in writing for the 20 days. But we could put in there, a caveat, based on, based on reasonable conditions of what Bob is bringing up, and and Bob brings up a reality, and if you look out your window right now, there's freaking reality, and if that nor'easter comes and hits us on Sunday, we're going to be we're not going to be able to meet that 20-day workday load to do a site investigation. So we got it. Bob brings up a good thing. I think we need to have a time frame, but we also need to have a caveat that gives us or gives the regulation some flexibility based on the situation. I mean, it doesn't have to be snow. I mean, it could be any other type of environmental hardship that that occurs. I think we need that little caveat to protect ourselves and everybody else involved.
Bob?
Well, I think the way it's written, we've got that. An unreasonable delay, it doesn't necessarily even have to be environmental. It can be an elevated blood lead in a kid. And there is a specific time frame in which lots of actions have to happen. It can be a pandemic where all of a sudden we have to stand up clinics and everything gets put on the wayside. The way it's written right now, if you leave it with review without unreasonable delay, if within 20 working days, next sentence down, completely separate sentence, with it 20 working days, the director, whoever it says, has to respond in writing as to why it is. Okay, that's essentially what's in the book right now, is essentially saying what your recommendation says, is that it's not considered unreasonable when you look at this snow. And if you want to know why it's taken so long, okay, then I have to give you an answer why it's taking so long, why it's taken the 20 days, which is what you just said, which is what it says in the book. So I don't know why we need this recommendation.
Applies to local. We want it to apply across the board.
Apply across the board. It's in the public health code section of the technical standards. We all
Does
use
it
that.
apply to deep?
Don't know. Don't work for them. Okay.
And does it
Okay.
apply to DPH?
Got somebody
I
from Matt
believe
can
it, I
answer that.
believe, yeah, Matt, but I believe it would.
The way it's here now, but right now we don't have, the only thing that there is in there is that if the locals send us up something and we don't approve it within a certain time frame, that then they can go ahead and approve it without with our out our secondary review. But it's not like that's the only thing that's in there. It's not like a thing we have to do the review in a certain time frame. That doesn't exist right now.
And that's what we were looking for, standardization across everybody to follow what was in the for the locals. Miriam?
The challenge here is that the 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 applications, are not standard. Like everything that comes in for review is not necessarily going to be a standardized approach. There might be nuances in the application. We might need to consider things case by case, and that might take longer. So I think, standardizing across the board, I get it, but I think in application, it's challenging.
Again, the goal was not for approval in 20 days. The goal was for processing and answers or questions from the approving authority within those 20 days. It's not final answer. Yes, David.
Yeah, I think my comment stands though for that too.
Okay, David.
Hey Matt, what's the 30 days review period in the DPH rules?
Which one are you referring to?
Isn't there somewhere in it might be the public health code that says there's 30 days?
That might be the one I don't have right in front of me, but the one that I was referring to was when it's over 2,000 and it's sent to us. And if for some reason we couldn't get to it in that time frame, whether it's 20 or 30 days, I don't know off the top of my head, then the local can approve it without our review. But it could be. I can get up and get my technical standards, but
That's my recollection. My recollection was it was 30 days.
It could be. It could be.
Before we go too deep into this, why don't we table this and get through the last recommendation? There's two other groups that need to do their recommendations, and I don't want to be a time hog, and we're already at 3:10 with 20 minutes left in the meeting. Jim, did you have a final thought, or are you good for now? John.
Yeah, so I would just propose that we've heard you, and again, to remind everyone, we are not writing law here. We are not writing statute. We are making recommendations that are the expression of areas of concern and discussion. So I would say let's throw in the caveats and make sure that we're talking, to provide input for weather and make sure that we're reinforcing the need for adequate staffing. But broadly speaking, this recommendation is trying to standardize a relatively limited initial review period. And I think that's what we're proposing. I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that.
All right, our final recommendation is impact on failing on-site wastewater systems on surface water and surface water quality. So failed systems provide a larger threat to surface water quality and pollution than the installation of new septic systems. Much like, new homes that we build today are infinitely more efficient than a home that was built in 1950. Failing septic systems present a significant challenge and an issue, often remain undetected until the property changes ownership. Despite concerns raised by neighbors regarding a potentially malfunctioning system, these complaints frequently go unresolved. This is primarily because local health departments lack straightforward methods to observe and effectively test the operational status of on-site wastewater systems. Furthermore, many property owners are aware of systems failure and wish to address them, but are not able to due to financial constraints. Our recommendation: establish a homeowner assistance fund to effectively abate any sewage and discharge or flows into storm drains, gutter, street, roadway, or public place, and shall not allow such materials to discharge into any private property so as to create a nuisance or condition detrimental to health or improve or repair the existing subsurface disposal system. We recommend creating a dedicated fund that offers need-based loans to homeowners for repair and replacement of failing on-site wastewater systems by addressing existing system failures or improvement of the existing subsurface sewage disposal system. The initiative would help prevent unnecessary environmental contamination and protect public health. The proposed loan structure would provide flexibility to the borrowers, allowing loans to be paid off through scheduled payments or repaid in full with interest at the time of property transfer, ensuring the program is straightforward and user-friendly. It is vital to encouraging widespread participation and maximize the effectiveness. Program administrator will need to be will be determined, but it is recommended that it is not managed through DPH or DEEP, but rather a government agency with similar programs in place. Any questions, concerns about that one? Got a thumbs up from Sonia. Jim?
For my fellow sanitarians, yes, the opening paragraph is verbatim per section 1913B103 as what a public nuisance is. So I wanted to put that in there as a foundation for the reasoning for for the funding.
Thanks, Jim. David?
We might want to look into Barnstable County, Mass has this program set up. They set it up and now somehow they're even making money with it. So it might be worth looking at how they've done that.
Excellent. Can you email me over that?
I can.
Rob?
I had to find the unmute button there for a second. Just a comment, maybe a couple of comments. I guess I don't have a lot of experience with what's going on in other parts of the state, and I'm sure colleagues in this group can clarify this point for me. But failing septic systems complaint within our jurisdictions do not go unresolved. They get resolved as quickly as possible, and if they do lag on for some period of time, it's for reasons that would be unusual. The other comment that I had was the note that departments lack straightforward methods to observe and effectively test the operational status. I guess that really speaks to the issue is what is the definition of a properly operating existing septic system. Today's it's not a nuisance, an actionable nuisance, unless it's actually backing up into a house or rental property, or it's discharging on the surface and there's a visible nuisance there, or somehow there's actual data because there's been some monitoring of the system and you can see that it's contaminating groundwater. The third scenario there would be highly unusual, and I don't know a residential system that's set up like that. A lot of DEP systems are, but not residential. So I guess in my mind, the notion that there isn't an effective way to effectively test or observe the operational status of the system is not completely precise. It's either a violation of the code or it's not, or if
Rob, if I can interrupt you.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
That was based on if a neighbor complained.
Okay.
So like if the homeowner complains or if we're testing for a transfer of property, then the procedures are there. But if I complain about my neighbor's system, it's very hard to do those tests without that homeowner's basic,
Well, if somebody complains to the health department, then we would conduct an investigation, which would involve a site inspection, obviously. And if there's observable nuisance, then that's actionable. I guess you're talking about scenarios in which there's no observable nuisance or we don't get access to the property.
You don't get access.
You know, most nuisances are observable from many are observable from the property line and then actionable whether you're on the property or not. But so I guess I'm questioning the frequency that's implied in this particular statement. But that's just my 2 cents based on my experience. I mean, we're just others can certainly pipe in on that point.
Matt?
Yeah, I have to wholeheartedly concur with Rob on that. I don't think these things get unaddressed statewide. I think there's a process. Basically, you issue orders. If they fail in the orders, then eventually you can get an arrest warrant and you get arrested. I've seen that happen. If you fail, if there's a health or nuisance condition. And so the thing as far as neighbors go, you don't want to go there. That's a Pandora's box when it comes to neighbors that don't like each other. And so you want to have it straightforward, sewage on the ground, sewage backing up in the house, or odors as being an actionable offense. Because anything other than that, the health department's resources will be just drained completely because there's a Hatfield to McCoy situation between two neighbors that can't stand each other. And they say that septic system is failing. And unless the health department sees an actual failure, they cannot take action, which is a good thing because, like I said, a lot of times these people just are looking for any excuse to stick it to each other. I see it all the time. So we have to be real careful with this.
We didn't want to put in mechanisms to police it. We wanted to recommend a way that people can affordably fix it if they don't have the resources.
That's a good thing.
That's our recommendation. You know, how it gets reported, you know, we're not saying anybody's not doing their job. We're just saying that when there's an issue, we want a mechanism that people can fix it without Band-Aids, you know, without.
And that makes a lot of sense. There are quite a few families out there that don't have the resources, that have a failing septic system. The small cities community development block grant is often used, and I think it's still used in some local communities like that. So, but additional sources of funding for those circumstances, I wholeheartedly agree with.
That's the intent of it. David?
I would reiterate what Rob and Matt said. I think it is very cut and dry to figure out why something failed, and I think the health departments have that skill set. Our definition of failure is cut and dry, simple. So maybe that's one sentence could be tweaked.
Yeah, I think we just need to maybe tweak the rationale behind pursuing this. I think
this is really the recommendation. This is it. You know, we're proposing a loan structure that would help people manage through this problem, because we all can agree that if it goes untreated, even through the litigating time that it takes to force somebody to do something, if there's an easy way, then people aren't going to spend $10,000 litigating to not do a $25,000 septic system.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Those are our recommendations.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you to your subcommittee members for this work. Obviously, a lot of thought and effort went into it. If there aren't any additional comments or questions, we'll move right along. Seeing none, I'd like to ask David Potts to report on the recommendations of the Nitrogen and Environment Subcommittee.
All right, well, thank you. We tried to make it fairly brief. So we broke this down into something requiring immediate action and then something more long-term. So our first was a nitrogen assessment threshold. The DPH should update its current regulations to require nitrogen assessments at 5,000 gallons a day per property for nitrogen sensitive areas and 7,500 per property for all their systems regulated by DPH. You want to go through it? You hear me, Jim?
Yeah, we can hear you. Would it be helpful for folks if this was posted or shared while David is going through it? Yeah,
it would help me.
Yeah, I'll share my screen here then.
And then you want to do questions each paragraph, or do you want to go to the end?
I think field the questions as they come.
All right, fire away. We good?
I see Bob Smith's hand up.
Dave,
Bob
just
Smith.
hey Dave, looking for just a little clarification when we talk about per property.
Yes.
If I'm looking to do a 40 lot subdivision, all 3-family homes, and it's still one property, is that assessment required because it's one property?
Believe me, we debated all this, and so I guess I should say that after significant debate, consensus was achieved on these points. So there was talk about one larger property, and would that, should we be managing it by a per acre nitrogen load? And ultimately the decision was, we're going to say it's per property. If you're putting 5,000, it could be a 200-acre parcel, or it could be a 2-acre parcel. That's where we drew the line.
Okay, but 200-acre parcel that's going to have 100 houses on it.
If those 100 houses use less than, so in this, depending whether it's a nitrogen sensitive area or a non, it's 5,000 gallons a day is the threshold and 7,500 is the threshold.
Okay,
So cumulative
so
flows.
On a proposed lot. I want to make sure, because I'm sure this question is going to come up if this gets approved.
All right, so basically how nothing's changing from how we did it. How's that for that?
Okay.
Dave, you
All
got
right.
Rob Miller's hands up.
Rob.
Sorry, still having trouble finding the mute button. Just a clarification to Bob's comment. So proposed subdivision, it's all going to be owned by one person at that point in time. And I'm trying to recall, but doesn't that make a difference? It's all owned by one person, even though, because it's a single property, hasn't been subdivided yet.
They
But
could
it's
certainly
proposing lots of individual lots, but it's still proposed. And then the other nuance there is that, if we do get involved at the subdivision level, that's at the discretion of the local planning and zoning commission pursuant to their statutory obligations. We are technically not legally really involved until somebody submits an application for a permit to construct to us. And by then, they're already individual lots. They may or may not be owned by different people. So I'm trying to figure out and process in my head, where this standard would kick in under the, if we were to propose regulations or propose a change to the regulations in this regard. And maybe I'm already maybe I'm opening up the can of worms that was the debate before. And if I am, I'm sorry. But this is the first time it's kind of been exposed to me, so I have those comments.
So, and Matt could probably help with this some, but my understanding is if there's a separate property, right, that's actually subdivided out in a separate property, that property, if it's under 5,000 or 7,500 per day, it passed, right? That's the threshold. So if a developer had 200 acres and he broke it into 200 1-acre lots and they're all separate subdivided lots, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a 100-acre parcel with either 5,000 or 7,500 on it.
Okay.
Is what it really, the methodology has not changed one bit. There was a lot of discussion about changing it, and we were unsuccessful in achieving consensus.
Okay, well, that I understand. Really, no change.
No,
Is that fair, Matt?
that's it. I mean, you basically the same way we assess jurisdiction between us and Deep is the same way we look at nitrogen. Separate properties under different owners, we don't consider that. It has to be the same owner, same property. Then we look at it collectively, but it's looked at individually if it's parceled with separate owners on separate properties, as long as it's under that threshold. So the subdivision is not going to be affected because those are going to be individual lots eventually. It's when there's one whole lot that has either a 5,000 gallon bunch of systems or single system, or 7,000 gallon bunch of systems or single system under the same ownership, same property. That's when it kicks in.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
you'll note, Rob, that later on in David's presentation that
okay.
there'll be long-term recommendations to review those sort of questions.
Okay, sorry for delay.
And just to clarify, Matt, it's 7,500 to 10,000.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Our number 2 was regulatory terminology and definitions. DPH should update its current regulations to replace and update environmental sensitive areas with the term nitrogen sensitive areas. A nitrogen sensitive area shall be defined as A, land within a coastal management area as defined by Connecticut General Statutes 22A-94. B, less than 50 feet from a wetland or watercourse as defined by Connecticut General Statutes Section 22A-8, excluding alluvial soils. All right, any questions there? All right, number 3. Really, if you take Matt's calculations and formula, we decided that we just state that in another way. This is really, if you do Matt's math on a project, what you're going to find is bullet 3, maximum nitrogen loading per acre. Update DPH regulations to state that sites subject to a nitrogen assessment will be limited to a maximum wastewater load of 1,635 gallons per day per acre. And that's the basis for 10 milligrams per liter total nitrogen.
Looks like Jim has a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Is number 3 in line with circular letter 2002-23, item 3?
Matt, I mean,
No,
number 3 is in line. I thought it was in line with what Matt's proposal was
Yeah,
recently.
exactly. No, so that Jim, yeah, I don't see the circular letter, but I know probably what you're referring to. It was a density calculation. No, it's not going to be in line with that. It's actually going to be significantly less conservative, I would say.
Yeah, because this says nitrogen loading design considerations be considered on all properties where there's less than 0.16 acres for each bedroom.
Yeah, that was drafted over 20 years ago. Yeah, I got you.
I just was looking at if that was a correlation or if this is something new that's going to replace that circular letter.
Oh, it absolutely will replace that letter.
All right, we'll go on to 4. 4 is non-alternative nitrogen treatment.
David, before you move on, it looks like Rob has his hand up.
Rob, sorry.
Sorry, no worries. Quick question. As part of the debate of your subgroup, I appreciate the reference that's basis 10 milligrams per liter total nitrogen, but some literature that Audra put out from DEEP at the beginning of the process noted that there was some science out there showing a causal effect between 5 milligrams per liter and some thyroid disease in some studies. And so I don't know if that was part of the discussion of your subgroup or not at that time.
We discussed a lot with this. I mean, if you get into it, certain, saltwater embayments have a much lower level. But ultimately, this is the EPA drinking water standard, and we could achieve consensus on that. We did not achieve consensus on some of these other issues.
Okay. Well, it's possible that I know that my understanding is EPA is reevaluating. I understand that the current administration, the standard may not change, but it may change down the road. And so I wonder then if maybe there should be some flexibility in a recommendation in that regard. If the standard goes down from 10 to 5, maybe it should be a consideration at that time and be noted as such.
I think that there was discussion going forward to, be flexible with all sorts of stuff. I think if science comes out at that point, I mean, that would be, pretty important to consider. Agreed.
Just real quick, guys. The good news here is the details of the formula itself are all in the technical standards. So if, in other words, the regulations themselves just state that the need to do this evaluation, but the details of it are in the technical standards, which means that we could quite easily make those changes that Rob's discussing due to
Okay.
technology and things, or technology or just science in general.
Great.
Agree.
Thank you.
All right, 4, non-alternative nitrogen treatment technologies. So 4A, nitrogen removal technologies that are presently approved by DEEP and published in the DPH technical standards shall be credited the same value by DPH as currently recognized by DEEP. 4B, nitrogen removal technologies approved by
Sorry,
DEEP.
Dave, can I chime in on that one? Just saying things that are currently approved by DEEP will be approved by DPH presents a challenge for us, given that we don't currently have the engineers on staff that are experienced enough to monitor those types of systems. So having those approvals translate between agencies would be a challenge for us on the implementation side.
Okay, and that's why if I'll read 4A again, Miriam.
Okay.
Maybe this will be helpful. So 4A, nitrogen removal technologies that are presently approved by DEEP. All right, DEEP approves them.
Yeah.
And published in the DPH technical standards shall be credited the same value by DPH as currently recognized by DEEP. So what that's saying is the technologies that are already approved by the DPH and listed in the technical standards, we're simply saying that that credit rating shall be carried from the DEP over to DPH.
Okay, yeah, that might be a challenge, but we can talk about it later. But I
Okay,
think
I mean, you already have them in the technical standards.
I
so
understand. I understand. I think
All right.
just, yeah, okay.
And 4B, nitrogen removal technologies approved by DEEP, but not specifically listed in the DPH technical standards that fall under the definition of subsurface disposal systems shall be credited the same value by DPH as currently recognized by DEEP. So that's really saying if there is a technical standard, if there's a technology that comes along that DEEP approves, and it has not yet been captured in the technical standards, that credit would be transferred over as well. So the same thing, but it's just not published yet.
So
David,
you're
look-
saying, so that would say that even if something is not published in the DPH standards, it would still count as the same as it does at DEEP?
For a credit, for nothing but the credit. So if they gave
Yeah.
a technology, let's say they said, if your groundwater concentration is 11, right? You do all your math
Yeah.
and it's at 11. And the DEP would credit you with, I'll say, a 20% removal. That credit would be allowed to be used on a DPH project, and that would make that concentration fall less than 10.
Yeah.
That's
So
what we're
that's
talking
gonna,
about.
yeah, so that's gonna create a credit, like a accountability challenge, because just because something's approved by DEEP, it doesn't mean that we have, like, then we have to enforce that, something that's been approved by DEEP. That would be a challenge for the state agencies to enforce and accommodate for. So I'm just flagging that that's not something that we can, we would be able to endorse right off the bat. That would certainly present some challenges for us.
Okay. 4C,
Yeah.
new,
David,
Dave,
yes.
I wanted to build off a little what Miriam was saying. I'm aware of some stuff that's approved by DEEP. They approved it with a number of conditions. Are you imagining that those conditions that DEEP approved it under would transfer over to DPH? Like, I'm looking at one DEEP letter at the moment that requires, in order to get that credit, a monitoring protocol, and how that would work, and 7 other conditions before that credit is reached.
And is that something that's approved by the DPH as a subsurface system presently?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So The simple ones, the ones you already approved, right? You
Yeah, but
approved
that would,
and
that
DPH
would,
approved.
yeah, that would be A, but I'm talking
Yep.
about under B.
B.
What the
So,
stuff we haven't approved.
okay.
Are you imagining we approve it under the same conditions as deep? Or
No,
are you imagining that we just take the credit number
I
and
think
incorporate it in?
the logic was that it would be approved by DPH. Right, so it'd be approved under the same methodology as 4A. If it could be approved under the same methodology as 4A, then that was the logic of 4B.
But there's some stuff that might be in a that's approved by deep under conditions that don't apply to technical standards or our regs.
Yep,
What do
and
you
that
do? What do you do in those cases?
I think it's 4C, but I can read 4C and then we can all talk about it. And that work? So 4C, new nitrogen removal technologies not currently approved by DEEP or DPH shall be approved in the following manner. And and remember, this is not only for DPH, this recommendation, this is DEP and DPH. So A, DEP shall review and approve as is their current practice, right? So they're not doing anything different. B, DPH, once a new approval policy has been established with review and guidance of the Code Advisory Committee that includes, but is not limited to, independent third-party testing and field data derived from a similar climate. So that's basically saying there's certain technologies that will need to be, fall under this new process for approval.
So Deep is not on the call today. I don't believe they had a flooding situation in their building that pulled Audra away. So I think this is definitely something that DPH and Deep would need to discuss. I will say that our agencies have our input really is to for the purposes of like shedding some light onto any potential implementation and kind of enforcement challenges that the agencies may have. I was going to bring this up at the end, but I think it's helpful now, just given that we're giving some feedback on some of the recommendations. The agencies have been discussing a request to add a caveat to the report that, we're not endorsing the report for the purposes of the report having a lot of budgetary constraints that, are not necessarily included in the governor's budget, and therefore we can't endorse any requests for funding like that would be present in these recommendations. And then additionally, there are just recommendations because it's, we're presenting this report as a largely a consensus driven rather than a vote. We can't be included in the consensus given a lot of the funding implications and requests, as well as the fact that, we don't really endorse a lot of the recommendations. So I just want to put that as a caveat that moving forward, that's the framework DPH is going to take with regard to feedback is going to be related to implementation, subject matter expertise, et cetera. But ultimately, I think that we're going to have to present some language to the group to add to the report, reflecting our, budgetary constraints.
Duly noted.
Thanks, Jim.
Mhm. David, you can continue on.
All right, and 5, uniform electronic tracking system. Provide the necessary funding to adopt wastewater treatment system electronic performance tracking software on all DEEP subsurface and surface discharges, DPH administered systems, and local health department systems. This software platform should provide, at a minimum, all of the features of a software platform that has proven successful in Barnstable County, Mass., including transparent, real-time public access to data. This data tracking and analysis software will provide the basis for continued use and approval of new wastewater treatment technologies including subsurface sewage disposal systems, advanced treatment systems, and alternative technologies in the state, and for any nitrogen modeling that is used to set regulations, policy, or practice. All right, good. No hands. All right, and there really was a sixth bullet. We didn't have it here, but I guess we all agreed on it so early we've forgotten it. But Matt, I don't want to speak out of turn. So the community systems, I think everybody all agreed that if you had so let's say two buildings, each with their own septic tank, and they discharge to one leaching system. Historically, we could not handle that under DPH jurisdiction. It was DEP. So I think we've all agreed under 10,000 that jurisdiction would shift to DPH. Is that fair, Matt?
Yeah, that's exactly what the original legislative proposal was, and that's what's been incorporated into these regulation changes.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then we came up with some long-term recommendations, and this, Rob, is part that, and it's just we couldn't get we thought there was a better way to do it, a simpler way to do it, but it just couldn't be achieved in this time period. So we're looking at require a newly restructured code advisory committee, based on really the building codes and standards model to establish rules, policies, and procedures regarding the fall, and we wanted them to consider, once that committee is set up, things like abutting properties would be one, consideration of DPH regulating maximum wastewater loads per acre rather than a maximum per property. This gets into trying to discourage people from taking a property and chopping it up into multiple little LLCs. So their per property thresholds are under 5 or 7,500, but we were not successful. Coastal nitrogen sensitive areas, consider the actual nitrogen concentrations in the water and actual watershed boundaries, and further refining nitrogen sensitive area assessments specific to the distance from coastal waters, which really sets a concentration, a salinity concentration, which ultimately is where the nitrogen is harmful. So if the salinity was not at a level where it would be harmful, we felt that is something that would bear out some further research in the future. And then wetlands, right now we're saying 50 feet from wetlands. The irony of this is it may be that we should site systems within 50 feet from a wetland, because the wetlands actually have all the dilution water in them. They're the low point in the terrain or topography. So that's where dilution water lies. And also wetland is a source of carbon and anoxic conditions. There's a lot of research that shows wetlands are actually very effective at removing nitrogen from groundwater. So we just felt that that's something going forward in the future we should really research. And then 4, nitrogen technology approval process. We have to come up with that process of technology approval if it doesn't fit into it as a subsurface sewage disposal system category. So thank you. Any questions? Well, Matt, I think I did that pretty efficiently.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the presentation and
Oh, you're
the
very welcome. Thank you all.
time and effort. So in the interest of time, I think we should just kind of move things along. And Sonia, will you be presenting on the regulations subcommittee?
Yeah, I just sent you an email. I was wondering if you could just bring it up real quick, Jim. I cannot figure out my computer. So, I don't want to embarrass myself already more than I have. So this is when talking fast is really going to be helpful, right? We have 4 or 5 recommendations. We went over them this morning. I did revise it a little bit. I have to revise it again. I ended up inadvertently dropping out some language, which we wanted to keep in there. So please keep that in the back of your mind for the draft that I did send already. I do need to revise it and tweak it a couple times, but the framework is there. So as soon as he puts it up, I will.
It's opening right now.
Sorry, Jim.
No
Put you on
problem.
the spot like that. I didn't do it to Peter this time.
All right.
Thank you, Jim. Okay. So, we went the beginning of the page, short, sweet, to the point. We talked about the executive summary, kind of just shortened it, what we were talking about. And I just want to go to the second page because that's really where the recommendations are. You're more than welcome to read this. I will send it out to everybody if they'd like. Just keeping it short. So short-term recommendation, mandatory field component competency module, meaning I know you guys need funding for a program. So, that aside, we do feel that having a field site assessment as soils training module as a prerequisite for phase 1 and phase 2, or, with phase 1 and phase 2 as being a prerequisite to actually be certified to go out and do these inspections. Simple, that's it. Second one was recurring continuing educations, implementing a mandatory continuing education requirement for all sanitarians to be completed every 2 to 3 years. And the goal here is to maintain an adaptive workforce capability of evaluating evolving industry standards and ensuring that cost-effective environmental solutions are not delayed by regulatory unfamiliarity. So simple. Again, these are things that we've all talked in all 3 groups. Third one, professional soil scientist recommended or requirement. So to ensure, and this one, we had a lot of conversation this morning about this. So it's more of a recommendation to ensure environmental compliance. A certified soil scientist should be required for new developments in some areas of special concern. The conversation kind of really went around, but we need to talk to the nitrogen environment group to see where that area of special concern is. But we put in such as, when you have a percolation less than a minute per inch, when you have a percolation more than 40 per minute inches, when it's a designated wetland area, which is already put in this areas of special concern, I believe, that section, or when a local sanitarian determines a site's complexity exceeds local capacity. This is just a recommendation for having a soil scientist available to the sanitarians to work with them. It's not a requirement, it's a recommendation. And, we only went through those 2 or 3 scenarios, knowing that nitrogen environment would have more to the areas of special concern. The fourth one is a formalization of the codes advisory committee transition. And we know that this happened before, like the pandemic. Matt, your group is great, but we should get back to that, making sure that we have established a fixed annual meeting calendar and a standardized process for code reviews, as well as implement a public protocol for submitting revisions, including accessible agendas and meeting minutes to ensure stakeholder alignment. Also, hopefully going with both in-person and Zoom for these meetings would be great. And that was stuff that was happening before. And I know you guys used to put those on the website. So that's just that comment. The long-term recommendation, however, is that we recommend the legislators authorize a task force similar to what we're doing right now to study the transition of the code advisory committee into a permanent codes and standard committee, exactly what other 2 groups have said. The body modeled after the established building department framework. I believe the first group had it said way better than we did, so maybe we want to borrow some of that language, or we'll somehow condense these recommendations, allowing for smaller footprints and higher density affordable housing. The other thing that we did talk about, and I just quickly put a sentence in at the end, was talking about a long-term recommendation of having the code advisory committee with CAURA talk about continuing educations for licensed installers. We talked a lot about the sanitarians, but we didn't talk about the installers. And it is a pretty important piece here, but it would be a lot of conversating, going back and forth, right? From all of us to, I want to say deal with that one, but I don't think the conversation needs to end because that one is a very important one. And that's it. And we talked about it at length earlier today, by the way, guys, the people on my committee. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, wow, really? All right, that's it.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you to the regulation subcommittee for all the work. So I think in the interest of time, we'll just kind of move along and wrap this meeting up. But before doing so, we wanted to chat a little bit about the final report timeline and expectations. Obviously, the public act that created this working group had us completing our business by February 1st. I think we might be a little bit off, but not too far off. So the goal here is for John, Sonia, and myself to synthesize the subcommittee reports into a final report for folks to review and comment on. Our goal will be to do that in the next couple of days, with the hopes that the working group will have an electronic copy, again, within 2 or 3 days to review and to consider. And what we'd like to do is have a final wrap-up meeting, on next Wednesday, February 4th. I know that that's opening day of session and it might be complicated, but we'll work with Peter to confirm that date. So again, the goal is for us to get the report out in short order, and for the working group to provide input and comments. And we can do that through either a shared document or folks just replying to the chairs of the sewage disposal working group. We'll give you guys specific directions on how to do that, at a later point. But the goal again is to have comments and feedback before our final meeting next Wednesday, ideally next Wednesday, and then we'll have a report to technically publish next Wednesday. So if I'm missing anything or misstated anything, Sonia and John, this would be a good time to correct me. All right. So
Just to check to see if Peter has the time available for next week. That would be the only thing. And
I see Tom Stanfield's hand up.
Thank you. Will the errors and omissions in the draft that was sent out to us be corrected as part of this work, or is that another subject altogether?
We hope that the final report will be free of errors and omissions.
Marvelous. Thank you.
And Peter, I don't know if you can confirm now that the 4th would be an acceptable date for us to have our final meeting.
Unfortunately, I can't. I'll try to get back to you as when I can.
Okay. Then we'll circle back to the entire working group with a specific date and time. And I would just ask Miriam, given the fact that and I presume you're representing both DPH and DEEP when you made that statement pertaining to the caveat that you would like to have included on the report. I would just also ask that included with the caveats pertaining to funding and maybe those the issues that the agencies may not agree with, that you also identify the things that you do agree with, if in fact there are any.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, our plan is not to get into specifics, but more just to have like a very general statement that would be included at the beginning of the report. And then we would plan to meet with, the legislators who this report is going to kind of explain where we have issues with the report, where we would agree prior to the bill being drafted. And then, we're all going to be working together throughout session on where this goes, if it goes in legislation, et cetera. So, but yes, but I hear you, Jim, and we're not going to specifically call out any certain things in the report either way. But we'll kind of mention that the main reason is generally because of the recommendations around funding.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Well, we can move on to any other business, which I don't have. I don't know if Sonia or John, if there's any additional uh, business before you. But if not, then I'd be happy to call for this meeting to be adjourned.
I'm good.
Seeing no further business, we
Yep.
are
Nope.
adjourned.
No further business. Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry.